Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube. Iyun with Benzion. Today's daf is daf Pevav, number 86. Most of today's daf is really verbatim what it says in Maseches Ksuvos, on I think daf Nun Ches or Nun Tes over there, where the Gemara really quotes our Mishnah on daf Pehei and wonders, right, how could a woman be makdish or ma'aseh adayim? She's meshuvah to her husband. She can't do it. Furthermore, it's davar shel ba'olam. If you want to say it'll take effect when the gerushin happens, she can't do it because it's davar shel ba'olam. The gerushin didn't happen yet. So the Gemara on Pehei Amud Beis, we started today's daf yomi. The Gemara says no, really she's makdish her hands. Now the husband doesn't own her hands; he owns what she produces with her hands. Her hands belongs to her. The shalo, right? This is important to distinguish in Dina Mominus. There's two aspects to ownership. One aspect of ownership is ownership over the physical object, right? Controlling the physical object. And there's another type of ownership. Sometimes they overlap, but you control the value of whatever the physical object is, right? Rishus, I have the right to use it, right? Sometimes something belongs to me, but I don't have the right to use it. Sometimes you have the right to use it, but it doesn't belong to you, right? Think of if I lend you something, right? I lend you something. It's still my object, but you have the right to use it, right? So therefore, you can split sometimes the Rishuso and the Shalo. Now, that's really what the Gemara is doing over. When the Gemara answers that she's machdish her hands, so her hands belong to her, but the value of her hands, whatever she produces with her hands, belong to her husband. So that's similar to lending something to her husband. It's not exactly lending, that's just the construct of the Torah in marriage. So the Gemara tries to understand this, and the Gemara finally relents on the top of Peva Beis. El Amar Ravashi Shiny Konamos. But the reason it works, that she can be makdish her ma'aseh adayim, even though she's meshubah to her husband, technically she has no rights to do that. He doesn't have to be made for the neder. The Mishnah says she should be made for the neder. Pehei and Aleph, right? Rabbi Yochanan ben Uri, Shema Yigar Shena V'Tehei Love. That's what Rabbi Yochanan ben Uri says. And Shmuel said Allah is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Uri. He might divorce her, it'll be Aser. But then the Gemara asks, Davar Shel Ba'olam. So the Gemara says she's makdish her hands, which takes effect right now, so it's lo ba'al olam. So Rav finally says no. Even though her hands are meshubah to her husband, technically, in terms of the Rishuso, in terms of the Rishus, right? In terms of the domain, it belongs to her husband, the value, whatever food she cooks, whatever piece of clothing she sews, it belongs to the husband. Nonetheless, when I'm makdish, when I do kedushas haguf, I'm makdish an animal to the Beis Hamikdash, even though someone else had a lien on that, right? They have the lien on that property, but it belonged to me still. So I can mafkim and shibud. For example, chametz becomes valueless, right? An evid becomes hefker. A korban is valueless because it has to be makar on the mizbeach, right? There's no kedushas dam, there's kedushas haguf. Those things, they lose their values. They only have shalo, and the shalo belongs to me. So therefore, it removes the shibud, which is just a right to the value. Similarly, when she's makdish her hands, right, it's like kedushas haguf. A neder is like kedushas haguf. So therefore, it removes the rights that the husband had to the value of what she does with her hands. So then the Gemara asks, "Ihachi lam lishamei garshena." Why do Yochanan say? The reason is because he might divorce her. Right now, it takes effect. So the Gemara answers in our gear. So over here, Tani va'od shamei garshena. Add an avav, od shamei garshena. It takes effect right now, right? And secondly, he might divorce her. Now, od, usually va'od means another reason, right? Both reasons could stand by themselves, right? He might divorce her. But the problem is, the Gemara already said, shamei garshena is a problem, because if you didn't have the first reason, the second reason is not good, because it's davar shel ba'olam. So really, when the Gemara says Tani va'od shamei garshena, it really has to be a combination of both reasons. Now, if you look at the Ran over here, the Ran adds in what the Gemara in Ksuvos really says. The Gemara says, right, why does he have to be, right, how does it help that he's made for the neder, right? Right? He can't, right? How could he be made for the neder? It takes effect if konamos amakin yeshiva. And the Gemara says, Almur Rabbanan l'shibud l'bal. These words are absent in our Gemara. But they're Rabbanan, knowing that the woman has the ability to be makdish her adayim and remove the rights the husband has to her ma'aseh adayim. They strengthened his shibud. What does that mean? They strengthened his shibud. So it's hard to understand because technically it doesn't mean that they gave the husband rights to the body of the woman, in which case she can't even machdish her hands. So what does it mean? Amur Rabbanan l'shibudi Baal, right? That's what the Gemara in Ksuba says. Amur Rabbanan l'shibudi Baal. So she can't be, and that's why. And then the Gemara answered, and that's why he says Shema Yikar Shana, but it takes effect after the gerushin. But that also doesn't make sense because after the gerushin, it's Darash Lo Ba'olam. It didn't take effect now. How is it going to take effect later? So I think you really have to go put these two answers together, put the two Gemaras together. And the Gemara, like the Gemara says in certain places, the Torah is poor in one place and rich in another place. Meaning sometimes you have to look at other Gemaras to put the two Gemaras together to try to understand what's really going on. And I think this is the correct explanation. Yes, the Gemara in Ksuba is Amur Rabbanan Shibudi Baal. Now, the Rabbanan the Rabbanan don't have the power to give bailus over the woman to the husband. But what they do have the power to do is to say what she's thinking or what her das should be. They could be koveya your das, even though you're in control of what you think. But the Rabbanan can conceptualize and say your das is effective in regards to this, or your das is meaningless or meaningful over here, right? Like we know by when you say Kadash Moshe Yisrael, when you're Makadesh a woman, right? The Gemara says in many places, the Gemara says Afkin Rabbanan l'Kiddushim, right? Most Rishonim explain that in certain instances, when a woman is mekudeshes to a man, she has to be maskim to the kiddushin, and therefore she just says al das Moshe. The husband says I'm al das Moshe v'Yisrael, and therefore the Rabbanan could take her das. She had das to be mekudeshes. They can say later on, you didn't really have the right das to mekudeshes because partially what you're thinking is subject to the Rabbanan's approval of what you're thinking. Right? You're not going to think what you want in Allah. Just because you think what you want doesn't mean the Chamim agree that your thought is valuable. So here what we're talking about, the Gemara before Rav Ashi, the Gemara tried to compare the case of a woman to a mashkon, right? Where someone lends money to someone else. And the person who got the money says, I'm giving you a mashkon, I'm giving you a collateral to ensure you're going to get a payment of your loan, but I only have the rights to be poded the mashkon in 10 years from now. So the Gemara said that would work, right? After 10 years, can you pod it, right? Even though I say now, before 10 years, when I pod it, because the mashkon belongs to me. You have the monetary rights over it. So the Gemara said you can't compare that. A woman, it's not possible she won't be ever divorced. We don't know when she's going to be divorced. So therefore, what's the Gemara saying? The Gemara is saying that a woman, right, you can't compare it over there because there's a lack of knowledge over there. She might not be Megoresha, so she has half. She thinks, right, she might be Megoresha. They're getting into the fight. She's taking the Dharam. It's a possibility, but it's not a complete. So in yeshiva you say lack of Gemira's das. She didn't completely think that. She thought maybe she had doubts in her mind. So with the Gemara answering over here, the Gemara says Amur Rabbanan Shibudi Baal. The Rabbanan basically said, even though technically she could be mafkim the shibud with her konamos over here, nonetheless they made it like she doesn't have Gemira's das. So they made it like she has, when she's makdish her hands, she did it without a Gemira's das, a half das, right? Combining that, v'od shema yigarshena, right? Like the Gemara said before, with a mashkon, right? After 10 years, for sure, yeah, it's for sure, right? But here, Isla Kisusa, it's a half das when she's not sure. So if you combine two half das, you get a whole das. So that's what the Gemara is saying over here. They strengthen that maybe, right, in her mind, she wants to be makdish her hands, but maybe she doesn't really want to be makdish her hands. The Rabbanan said the husband has strength over here to say about her das, about her knowledge, about her planning that she wants to be makdish. Maybe she really doesn't want to. So it's like 50% das. And then we're saying, like we said before, that she might have gerushin, 50 plus 50 equals 100%. So combining those two things, those two reasons together, it's 100% das. And that's why it works. It did in her das, in her Gemira's das, whether she really wanted to be makdish her hands or not. And that is really what the Gemara is saying. It's not after the gerushin happened, not it's because Shami Gershena. So right now it works because of the Gemira's das. Even though Amur Rabbanan, they took away half the das, because of Shema Gershena, you add 50% of the das, so you have 100% of the das, and therefore it's comparable to a mashkon after 10 years. Hope you enjoyed today's share. See you in the next one.